The Prime Minister has made an extraordinary accusation in Question Time, subsequently withdrawn, that the Deputy Labor leader Richard Marles is the Manchurian Candidate. The Manchurian Candidate's a famous book and film in which the son of a prominent political family is brainwashed into spreading communism. The slur follows the Defence Minister Peter Dutton calling Anthony Albanese China's preferred candidate for Prime Minister. It's all an example of the Liberal Party playing on what it perceives to be one of its strengths going into the federal election, national security. For a look at the key security challenges currently facing Australia, I was joined earlier for an exclusive interview with the Director-General of ASIO, Mike Burgess. Mike Burgess, thanks for coming in.
It's great to be here, Leigh.
How concerned are you about any kind of foreign interference in the Australian federal election?
Sure. So foreign interference, espionage and foreign interference, in fact, supplants now terrorism as our nation's principal security concern, and that's not to take away from the threat of terrorism. But in terms of foreign interference in the federal election, we don't believe that a foreign government could actually change the outcome of our election for a whole range of reasons. Our election process and our system of democracy is robust, so don't believe that can happen. Of course, we do see foreign interference attempts to influence candidates and influence members of parliament. We will continue to see those attempts and they will try, but I'm very confident with the actions of my agency and other actions that we take that election will not be interfered with. And of course, I'm very confident that the vast majority of politicians that we deal with are actually thoroughly resistant to that type of foreign interference.
What countries are wanting to try to infiltrate the Australian political process?
Yeah, you'd be surprised that it's more than one country, so there are multiple attempts at foreign interference and espionage in this country.
You've said on the record that you don't want to name the countries that are involved, but you've also said that you want ASIO to be more transparent. People just assume that it's China. Why can't you be more direct about naming countries?
Well, one, I don't think it's my job to actually call out a particular country. I'll leave that to governments. My job and the job of my organisation is to identify these threats and help deal with them.
How many professional spies do you think are active in Australia?
Again, we don't give numbers, but again, multiple countries are attempting this. A recent activity that we took in the last 2 years, we discovered a nest of spies. We understood what they were up to. They were looking to monitor a diaspora community. They were looking to steal defence technologies. They were looking to get access to police records to follow up on people. They were trying to get access to security protocols at a major international airport. We found them. We've quietly removed them. The harm has been reduced. The individuals that might have been doing the wrong thing have all found their path to not doing that anymore. That's just one of many examples that we deal with every year.
The Prime Minister in Parliament this afternoon has referred to the Deputy Labor leader as the Manchurian Candidate, which he then withdrew. We've heard the Defence Minister Peter Dutton the other day claim that Anthony Albanese was China's preferred candidate. How concerned are you about politicians weaponising national security and intelligence in the lead up to the election?
So there's two things I'd say there. One, the foreign interference is against all members of Parliament, so it doesn't go after one particular party or the other, so it's kind of equal opportunity in that regards. In terms of what politicians do, I won't comment on what politicians do, but let me take it back to what I really do care about. ASIO is apolitical. My staff are apolitical. They put their lives on the line to actually protect Australians and Australia from threats to security. The ASIO Act requires us to be apolitical. I take that very seriously.
Well, it can't make your job any easier when politicians do politicise it.
So I'll leave the politics to the politicians, but I'm very clear with everyone that I need to be that that's not helpful for us.
You recently said that the COVID-19 period has sent online radicalisation into overdrive. What demographic are you currently most worried about in Australia?
So it's the radicalisation of minors which is most concerning. As Director-General, it's a really disturbing trend. As a parent, it's deeply distressing. So we've seen an increase in the number of minors being radicalised. The age of those minors is decreasing. One of our youngest subjects is 13. It happens online and it happens actually in the real world, including in the schoolyard. We see minors who are actually attempting to recruit and radicalise other minors, and they're using techniques similar to that you would expect pedophiles to use. Flattery, friendship, bringing them in, actually showing them material that gradually increases in terms of how horrific it is, and then turning it through intimidation, threats of isolation and bullying them to actually get them to get into their ideology. It's very disturbing.
To what kind of causes?
It's both ideologically motivated, so nationalist and racist violent extremism, neo-Nazis, or actually religiously motivated violent extremism. It's on both cohorts, and right now, every week on our priority caseload for CT, more than half of them are actually minor cases, and that is really disturbing.
You've warned that we are seeing more specific issue grievances that can spill into extremism. Is it predominantly attached to left or right-wing agendas?
No, we think it's unhelpful to put it on a part of the political spectrum. Of course, there is some politics in this, but we recently, about a year ago, changed the language, so it's across the board. And in fact, the protests we're seeing today are actually a whole range of social, economic or conspiracy grievances which are driving these individuals. It's also, though, an important point to make that ASIO is not interested in protest and dissent. That's lawful in this country. The protests we saw in Canberra last week, for example, the vast majority of that was peaceful. The vast majority of protesters we see are not violent extremists, and we have no interest in them. The vast majority of protests are not violent, but sadly, there are a small number of individuals that do act, think and plan and will go to violence, and the most likely terrorist attack in Australia will continues to be the actions of an individual or a group of individuals that will motivate to violence with little or no warning.
You predict that Australia is going to see more behaviour in terms of the radicalisation that we've seen around some of the COVID issues like anti-vaccine mandates and lockdowns, protests and so forth. As we move past COVID, what do you think are the issues that are going to drive that?
So COVID is one of the things that's driving it. Because there's something else happening in the world, this rise of anti-democratic behaviour. But COVID certainly has helped that. In fact, in 2007, ASIO did an assessment of the security implications of a pandemic. Now, we're not health experts, but our job is to understand phenomena that drives our security environment. We predicted there would be a rise of anti-government, anti-democratic behaviour, but it's not just COVID that's done that. So there's a disturbing rise, including nationalist and racist violent extremists, which is the principal ideologically motivated grievances we see here, but it's a range of other things. We have groups called involuntary celibates. They are just violent extremist misogynists who believe women are the root of all of their problems, and they've killed people overseas. And we have people with those beliefs here in this country.
Your job is to immerse yourself in pretty confronting material and to game worst-case scenarios. What keeps you up at night?
Thankfully, I'm an optimist, and I know my staff are an optimist. So, you know, espionage, foreign interference has supplanted terrorism. Terrorism still remains a concern. I think the terrorism threat as a country we handle pretty well. Despite the terrorism threat remaining probable, that means there's just a small number of individuals that want to do acts of terrorism. And I think we are managing that well as a country. The job of catching spies actually has been a job ever since my organisation was created 73 years ago. We'll continue to do that well. Of course, geopolitical circumstances are more tense, great power competition. The impacts of the pandemic all have an impact on our security environment, but I still think we are handling that well. We just have to continue to be who we are, and I think we'll come out of it okay, as long as we focus on the threats.
It's rare to see the head of ASIO give an interview, so we thank you very much for speaking to our audience.
Thank you, Leigh.